Hello and welcome to the Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena.
And this is where we talk about the good, the bad, and all the shift in between.
We'll just talk mad shift.
Let's get into it. And on this week's episode, when you recognize that your kids are actually your teachers.
Yeah.
They become your teachers. I think they've always been.
Yeah, when you have to open yourself to it.
Yeah. You just got to get to
Humble yourself to
Humble
it.
yourself. Got to be vulnerable enough to listen.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, let's do the Skin Deep cards.
All right. We're in the healing edition.
The healing edition. I'll go first.
Okay.
What is a value we do not share in common, and why do you think that is?
A value we do not share in common. I would say probably like doing super risky things.
And why is that?
Probably because of my own background in flight nursing. I've seen too many times the other side of like, hey, hold my beer, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of poses like this level of caution in me that avoids high risk.
Mm-hmm. Were you like that when you were younger though? Or is that only because of being a flight
you know
nurse?
what? When I was younger, do you know what I wanted to be? A stunt woman.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
no, it was after working in the emergency room and after working, in Life Flight, it was that pretty much changed my view. But yeah, when I was a kid, when I was about 9, what I wanted to be was a stunt woman. So
was there a
complete
TV
opposite.
show that made that dream?
Maybe Charlie's Angels, I don't know, but I
Yeah.
remember being a kid and like putting my friends on my handlebars and then jumping ramps, and that was like, yeah, let's do it. So I did. I thought I would be a stunt woman. I didn't want to be the star. I wanted to be the one doing the fun, crazy stunts,
Yeah.
So
Okay.
totally changed, but yeah, it's not one we share still.
No. So what's your card?
All right, mine is, what would you say is your initial reaction to conflict?
Now or before? I mean, what is my initial reaction to conflict? Try to be super realistic and honest with that. I think my first reaction is to question where I'm at. Not physically or geographically, but how am I feeling? Am I already triggered? Where am I emotionally before I react? I think that's kind of the first thing. And then the second thing is like, why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is this happening?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say based on even our last podcast,
Yeah.
that's grown a lot.
Yeah. It's evolving and changing. And what we've also recognized is that depending on who it comes from,
Yes.
those levels may not have changed as much as I have thought I have changed.
So when things are more somebody closer to you.
Yeah. The personal
or it's
connections.
Personal, then you're maybe not as able to like distance yourself from what's happening.
Yeah. I
And
was
be able to go, where am I at emotionally?
Yeah, like taking criticism from Aiden, from my son, my oldest son. I wasn't able to hear that, or I was just so offended by it because my oldest son is going to school to study psychology. And so I feel like I'm just being psychoanalyzed by my son. And the fact is that I didn't realize how much I respect his opinion, so much so that it affected me so deeply.
Yeah.
But I use the emotion of anger to kind of deflect and not really feel it because I'm very sensitive to criticism from those who I hold dear.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Do you feel like you go more into a defensive state rather than to be, that's not really about me, or it's not true. You don't even know me.
Yeah, that's a constant thing that I've always been super defensive, which has led to, why I've been in so many conflicts.
Yeah.
And it's kept me stuck because in some ways I've been very blind to it until that experience, from the guy calling my truck a refrigerator and berating me, to then moments at home where I was like, I wonder why I could have done it with that, where it was so blatantly just
rude.
But something that may be closer to home that maybe I question within myself hits so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Well, let's get into this episode. So
Okay.
this came about because after this weekend, I did some writing, and I wrote a letter to myself just because it was in my head. And this weekend, my nieces came over, and they're 3, I think, forgive me if I don't know their exact ages, but they're 3, 9, and 12. And they haven't all spent the weekend together with us because the youngest one is so young, it's very difficult to manage. And they're all 3 girls, which we only have boys. So I've never really raised girls. And so when they came over this weekend, and my boys absolutely shared in helping kind of keep things covered while we were cooking or we were running errands and doing this and that. They just stepped way up. And so after this weekend, last night I was just reflecting, and I wrote, so I'll just read you what I wrote.
Yeah.
The best gift you can give to your child is to show them how to love themselves. After watching my grown children guide, listen, and play with their young cousins with unconditional love today, it opened my eyes. That is something that us as adults forget to do. We are so busy trying to prevent a trauma that we create another. We do not need to put fear into our kids to make them listen. We may consider teaching them by example, like my sons showed me today. They showed me the way they would have preferred I raised them. Because in all honesty, I did not have the patience these young men did. I did not raise them without fear. I did not guide my children by example. I scared them with consequences. I did not listen to my kids because I was too busy projecting my own fears onto them. I may have considered guiding by example, things like teaching them, I brush my teeth because I love myself. I wash my hands because I love myself. I clean my room because I love myself. I really wish I had done better. I did my best at the time, but now I must do better. I realize that I'm still holding on to the guilt of who I've been.
Mm. Yeah.
And I stopped there, but I feel like there's so much more because I have just pulled the thread on this.
Yeah.
And really just, recognizing that these boys had so much more patience than I did, than I ever had. And the ways that I was hurt as a kid, I tried to raise my kids in the opposite. And I recognized my sons doing that this weekend.
Ah, yeah.
And it created a lot of guilt in me. I was like, oh, I still have so much guilt. And then speaking with you today, I realized that this guilt is still what's making my triggers so reactive.
Yeah.
Because I'm processing all these emotions. I'm doing my breath work. I'm trying to stay balanced every day. But I haven't really chosen myself.
Yeah.
And dealt with the guilt.
Yeah.
I feel like I have, but there was a level that I haven't reached or been willing to see. I've been blind to it.
Yeah. I know when we talked, you said, and then the suggestion was perhaps you are still carrying guilt, for how you parented or the way that you were. There was, growing up, there was a lot of anger and outbursts and things that looking back, you regret.
Yeah.
But I think even in, talking about how when you're triggered, when there's criticism of you, if the way you parented or the way that you act or any of that, that there is some level of guilt that you hold. That's why you're not still free in that area. Like there's still that unprocessed, emotion around how you did things before you knew.
Yeah.
When you're moving in this process of healing and becoming more aware of your actions, how it, affects other people and choices they make, choices you make, and you're moving through all of that. It's a lot to process, right? And you do the best that you can. And then these moments where you see this example of your kids, taking care of their nieces in a way that was like the opposite. Yeah. Right. That you described.
They're both grown men. They're 18 and 22. And
and to see them kind of, parent, like doing parenting tasks with these kids and being able to see like, oh, they did it with love. They did it with patience. And to know that the reflection was, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
So there's definitely like a level of holding of guilt over that. So how do you process that?
Well, this weekend was, recognizing there was a stark contrast was the beginning of something that I haven't been really willing to see. I know that this is something that I've been working on, but there's a level still of manipulation that justifies even my current actions. And I say that I'm trying to become more aware, but I'm still blind to things.
Mm-hmm.
You think that you got it all figured out, but then experiences happen or conflict happens and there's some growth. There's some, some room to grow.
Yeah. It's just showing you a part where you're not free.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Those triggers are showing you where you're not free.
Yeah. I realized, I went back and read the texts from Aiden from a previous conflict and the ways in which he called me forward, and it was super offensive to me, but it was very on point.
Yeah. Maybe that's why it hurt so much.
Yeah. And he even said that within the text. And it took some time because the first thing that I did, I have a hard time with criticism. So the first thing that I did was, where am I? How am I feeling? Where am I at right now? Oh, I'm tilted. The next one is why? Why is he doing this? But it never led me to like pull back and recognize that my son is trying to tell me something,
Mm-hmm.
And this conflict is an opportunity for me to grow.
Yeah.
But I can only do that if I really, truly listen.
Yes. And not defend.
Yeah.
To try to understand.
Mm.
And sometimes it almost takes removing yourself, like from the reaction and just observing like what's happening and why, and observing it from both points of view.
Yeah.
Almost stepping into his shoes.
Yeah.
And being able to think about like what that must have felt like to write and what frame of mind was that person in. And that it must have been a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Or, where are they at to want to do it? But that takes you stepping out of yourself.
Yeah.
And able to look at that view. And when you're in defense, it's really hard to do that.
Yeah. I felt like I took the step of, I really did ask myself, what must I have done to him to make him speak to me this way?
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't, that was more of like maybe blaming him. Like what? Yeah. Not really accepting what I've done, or what I'm still doing.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's a lot of things that I think that I've changed, but there's some core ways that I haven't.
Yeah. And
not being willing to see those because I'm already dealing with so much of the stuff that I'm pulling up.
Yeah.
But I think it's a process, and there's, to the resolution, there's a timeline, and I can't rush my healing.
No.
But like when things come up like this is my opportunity to grow. But there's been several opportunities, but I've shunted them because I haven't been willing to listen.
During those other opportunities, what did you do?
Shut it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, why is he, he has no life experience. He doesn't understand, he's studying psychology, but, he hasn't been bitten by the bug of consequence. So yeah, in a book, it works out these ways, but in reality, you're in an uncontrolled environment that make life go anyway, every way possible. And so I justified it by that.
Yeah.
And all those could be true, but it's not taking ownership and accountability for me. It's making excuses.
Yeah, or coming to the place of compassion of what frame of mind he must have been in to write it.
Yeah, and I think in some ways, this healing that I'm going through and talking about the things that have happened to me may come across to those that I've hurt closest to me as excuses for why I am the way that I am. They're more excuses and justifying why I did the thing I did the things that I've done, talk to them the way, and, it's like raising them with fear, consequence, conditional love. If you don't do this, then you don't get that. And not really truly supporting them and empowering them. Yeah. And that's why I was saying, when I was thinking last night, I was like, yeah, instead of telling them, if you don't brush your teeth and, you don't get this and you don't,
We're going to take something away.
You know what? We're going to take care of ourselves. This is how we love ourselves. We brush our teeth and we feel better, all these things. I don't know if that's reality or realistic, but for me, it just seems like that's something that I could try to do from this point forward.
Yeah.
Is because I watched my kids. They were the teachers.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, why couldn't I do that? And so I think I hold guilt.
Yeah.
Behind that specifically.
Well, I think sometimes the best way to teach a kid anything is to emulate that behavior. So if you're not in a position where you're loving yourself and taking care of yourself, how do they learn that?
Yeah. And I think on the surface, I've been doing a lot of things that look like I'm taking care of myself, but at the core things I haven't. Does that make sense?
Like, tell me how.
Stopping drinking, and I lost a bunch of weight, got my braces, just living healthier, eating healthier, spending more time with my family than just all caught up in work. Like those things, all things that needed to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm able to celebrate those things, but maybe still using those as a deflection in some way for the
past,
for the things I haven't done yet. Like, look what I've already done.
Isn't that enough?
Isn't that enough? Yeah.
Yeah. And then also it doesn't negate what's been done in the past.
No.
Or even if we say, well, I realized that why I acted this way is because I was exposed to this. I was raised with violence. I was,
Yeah, but that all sounds like a cop-out to the person who's the other side of, being a victim of Noel.
Yeah. It kind of just invalidates their ability to process what they've gone through. Mm-hmm. So in some ways, it can be a manipulation.
Well, that is what I did not realize. I wasn't conscious of that it was a manipulation. I think in some ways, I asked myself, how could I not know? Mm-hmm. But I think my brain was overriding to survive.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think I could handle.
Yeah.
Letting go of control.
Yeah. I think it's a big realization. I don't know, to come to this side of it and to be able to, one, see your kids and realize, wow, look at, they're showing me what they would have preferred as a parent. Mm-hmm. And that is bringing up this hurt in me for what I didn't do. Right? That's going to be something for you to process.
Yeah.
But how do you maybe even use that realization as a way to open up conversation with them, to allow them to express how they feel about how they were raised, and being able to give them a voice?
Well, we talk so much about holding space, but that's what I need to be able to do. I haven't been able to hold space for the people that I've hurt.
Why do you think that is?
The guilt. Mm-hmm. And I could tell you a month ago, if you asked me, am I still holding on to guilt and shame? I would have said, no, I'm every time it comes up, I try to work through that. I try to process those emotions. But for some reason, I haven't been able to recognize this one.
Yeah, I'd say because I've asked you before, or do you still feel guilty? And it's always been, no, I don't think so. No. But then it's like when the rubber hits the road.
Yeah.
And you have a moment like this, there's something that it's pinging.
Yeah.
So in some ways it may be that unprocessed guilt, because if you haven't fully forgiven yourself, it's not neutral.
Yeah.
It's still sore.
Yeah.
So there isn't a lot of space to be able to hold a conversation with someone that you've hurt if you haven't been able to forgive yourself and know that if I would have known better, I would have done better. Mm-hmm. And I need to forgive myself so that I can hold the space for you to be able to open up and process and have an opportunity to express with me how I've hurt you, and me not move directly into a line of defense.
Yeah.
Because when I do, then that shuts down everything. That shuts down the conversation. Then the other person will pull back. It's like, oh, here we go. Now you're a victim again.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I have done that as well with my own kids, because the worst thing you can say to me is I'm a bad mom. Why? Because I care so much. Also, there's a part of me that probably holds a feeling, an innate feeling, that I didn't do it right and I didn't do good enough.
Yeah.
I think
parts of me really knows that I did the best that I could at the time. I mean, I hear that all the time and I go, I really do believe with what I was had on my table and all these things. I've always give 100% effort. I don't try not to do things the right way.
But that doesn't negate whether or not someone was hurt by your quote unquote best.
No.
Right?
Yeah, it doesn't.
So when you say to them, well, I did the best I could.
Yeah, that's another invalidation.
There's nowhere to go with that.
Yeah, it's more like really sitting with, I'm sorry for what I've done, and I can't change what's happened in the past, but I can do better from this point on.
Yeah.
That's way better than saying, when you know better, you do better. I had all these things happen to me. I'm sorry, bud.
End of story.
Yeah, which is pretty much in a nutshell. We've had many conversations about my childhood and who I am, but I don't think that those things ever really landed for them.
Yeah.
I don't know why they would.
Well, if someone, like if you think about if you're still holding the pain of what happened to you, like let's say that the person who hurt you the most, okay, came to you and said, I had a really rough childhood, and that's why I did the things to you that I did, and I would have done better if I'd known better. One, great, but let's say you're a kid, you're early in your adulthood, and there's no processing of like what happened to you. Like I understand what happened to you, why you acted that way, but where's my opportunity to feel what I feel about
what happened to
that
me?
I'm angry.
Yeah.
That I didn't get things I needed. And really being able to hold the space for that.
Yeah.
Just because you're in your healed version of yourself doesn't mean that the pain that you've caused other people is suddenly gone.
Or the healing version of myself, not the healed.
The healing version of yeah, exactly. Exactly. The
Clearly.
Evolving version of yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a really good reflection. One for any parents who are parenting right now and really thinking about being able to parent from a place of where you would have preferred to have been parented.
Well, I don't think that I've been able to forgive myself or reflect without judging myself. And I think that's the component that's been missing because that's one thing that I do to others. And it's one of the things I call out on other people when they just judge. But I do it all the time internally. I'm much better at not letting those things out of my head, and keeping them as internal thoughts. But I still find that in the inside talk or internal talk still in some ways supports that.
Yeah. So how are you going to do this different?
Well, the self-reflection, I've got some more reflection to do and some writing. Just that little bit was just the tip. Right at the end of the weekend, I was like, wow, this is one of the greatest weekends I've had in a long time. It was almost like, I think I told you, I felt like I was a grandpa to my nieces who are so young because I'm 49 and I don't have young kids like that. And so when I was taking them through the playground, we were at the park and I was like, wow, I just feel totally different than a parent.
Yeah.
It was almost as if I know they're my nieces and I have grown nieces who are in, later parts of their life, but these young ones, I think the whole experience just made me really just sit back and feel into the moment. And it gave me it really opened up my eyes. So I think I need to find a way to forgive myself.
Yeah.
And find some new practices. One is something that I'm going to make a commitment to, which is no longer cussing.
Yeah.
And I know I cuss even on this podcast sometimes. But I think it's important for me to stay mindful in what I say. And I find the times that I curse or I use foul language, I'm free flowing and just letting things come out without being mindful.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to cause me or will help me to
slow it down
and respond rather than react, the thing that we talk about so much.
Yeah.
So finding ways for myself to slow my thoughts down on top of already my breath work and, my own wellness and taking care of myself. I think this, making a commitment to that, I'm hoping like stopping drinking will be another evolution in my thought processes.
Yeah. So being able to sit, reflect, and to sit with the emotions that are there.
Yeah.
like that are actually there, and
Yep.
kind of guilt or shame.
Yeah.
And I think being able to process those emotions and create the space in yourself will create the space for you to be able to have these conversations with the kids, with your own kids, and invite them into the space of being able to know that they can be seen and heard, and in a way that is not going to be defended.
Yeah. Like I said, that's where my downfall has constantly been is
Mm-hmm.
feeling bad and feeling guilty about what I've done, and then feeling the need to defend
Yeah.
what I've done instead of just owning it. Because there's a big difference.
Yeah. I
And
think that
that's
getting to
something
that,
I'm really
getting to that neutral place, right? Because when you're in a neutral place, there's no need to defend. You're just taking in information.
I really felt like I was in more of a neutral place.
Mm.
And I think I was denying that I left, I forgave myself.
Yeah.
I think there's probably another word that could describe not forgiving myself, but I was working through I was trying to heal. I am trying to heal.
Yeah.
But I think you have to self-reflect and recognize where you're actually at and listen to the people around you.
Mm-hmm. Open communication without defense.
Be willing to listen, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for writing that letter to yourself, because it was definitely an inspiration for this podcast. Because as soon as I read it, I'm like, this is it. You need to say this.
Yeah.
It's an important piece for parents, for relationships.
Yeah.
And to take a moment to respond and be able to respond in the ways that you're proud of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not taking it personal.
Yep. It's not personal. Nothing's personal.
Listening with intent. Active listening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, thanks for allowing me to share this weekend's conflict or experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that other people can share their experiences with us and maybe, let us know ways that this may be connected with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you want to hear more of? Let us know your stories.
Yeah. Like, share, and follow. All right. That's been another episode of Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena. Let us know what your questions are, and we'd love to use them on a future episode. Or check us out on Insta at Let That Shift Go, or visit our website, serenitycovetemecula.com.